All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are taking on the absolute ultimate mystery of a world-famous mansion. We're talking about a place that attracts millions of visitors, and a woman whose name has literally become synonymous with the supernatural. Yep, the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. Now, if you've ever even heard of this place, you've probably heard the spooky stories. But today we're going to use actual facts to peel back a century of rumors and reveal something far, far more fascinating. So that brings us to the big question. Was the world's most bizarre mansion built for ghosts or for the living? For decades, the narrative has just been that this house is this giant monument to fear. But as we comb through historical records, architectural evidence, and firsthand accounts, we're going to uncover the incredibly attractive, highly functioning, and very real life that was actually happening inside this place. But before we get to the truth, let's look at the myth. Section 1, the haunted legend, the spirits of the Winchester rifle. You've likely heard the famous folklore here, right? That Sarah Winchester was supposedly cursed by the vengeful spirits of everyone who had ever been killed by a Winchester rifle, the so-called gun that won the West. According to the legend, a medium told Sarah that the absolutely only way to appease these angry ghosts and, avoid her own death was to continuously build a house for them. If the hammers ever stopped, she would die. And so, the story goes, she engaged in 38 straight years of chaotic 24/7 construction. I mean, it makes for a fantastic ghost story, right? But it entirely eclipses the real woman behind the wooden nails. Which brings us to Section 2, the real Sarah Winchester, beyond the madness myth. Because the real Sarah Winchester, she was not a crazy, superstitious woman running from ghosts. Actually, she was a brilliant, grieving woman just trying to find a way to move forward in the world. She was a child prodigy who spoke 4 languages. She was a self-taught architect and engineer. And honestly, most importantly, she was a deeply grieving mother and wife. Her history tells a super profound story of human loss. Let's trace this out. In 1862, Sarah marries William Wart Winchester. Just 4 years later, absolute tragedy strikes. Their infant daughter Annie dies of an illness. Sarah is understandably devastated. Then, in 1881, her husband William dies of tuberculosis at just 43 years old. So Sarah inherits a massive fortune. We're talking $20 million and half the company's stock. But she has lost her entire immediate family. So in 1884, she doesn't flee from ghosts. She moves out west to the sunny Santa Clara Valley in San Jose. It was just a very human search for solace, a change of scenery, and a new beginning. And the people who actually knew her, they vehemently denied all those spooky rumors. Roy Lieb, who was the son of Sarah's personal lawyer of over 25 years, stated it incredibly plainly. He said, "Mrs. Winchester was a sane and clear-headed woman. The commonly believed supposition that she had hallucinations is all bunk." Her staff and friends were actually deeply distressed when, after she died in 1922, her beloved house was turned into a haunted tourist attraction. So let's look at what she actually built. Section 3, an architecture of care, designing for the living. Instead of some chaotic maze built out of fear, the Winchester estate was actually an intentional, highly functioning ecosystem. It was an attractive and real place where people lived, worked, and really thrived under Sarah's careful direction. Just to wrap your head around the sheer scale of what she built, Sarah bought a pretty modest 8-room farmhouse and transformed it over the decades into a 160-room marvel. It spanned 24,000 square feet. But it wasn't a prison. It was this sprawling, beautiful estate with gardens featuring plants from 110 different countries. Basically, she was running a massive agricultural and domestic enterprise. Let's look at how that spooky lore was completely fabricated. For decades, tour guides claimed Sarah would lock herself in this infamous seance room every single night to commune with spirits and get architectural blueprints from ghosts. Sounds creepy, right? Well, estate records show this room was actually just the gardener's bedroom. The mythmakers literally just took the mundane, everyday realities of a working estate and spun them into a haunting. And visitors always love to point at those bizarre staircases that switch back and forth with tiny little steps, claiming it's a confusing spirit labyrinth meant to trip up ghosts. But in reality, Sarah was a petite woman, only 4'10", and she suffered from debilitating severe arthritis. Those shallow steps were an incredibly empathetic, totally practical design choice just to help her get to the upper floors without aggravating her chronic pain. It wasn't built to confuse the dead, it was built to comfort the living. So why does all this matter? Well, it matters because Sarah was a visionary and caring leader. She paid her staff double the going rate. She provided free housing for her workers' families right there on her land, and she installed cutting-edge technology, like an annunciator intercom system to respectfully and quietly communicate with her staff. She put in indoor plumbing, elevators, and even created an irrigation system that ran on recycled water. No joke. She wasn't holding hostages in a haunted house. She was running one of the most progressive, modern, and well-paying workplaces in the entire Santa Clara Valley. Okay, I hear you asking, if she wasn't crazy, how do we explain the stairs that literally go straight up into ceilings, or the doors that open to two-story drop-offs? Well, that brings us to Section 4, the 1906 earthquake, the true cause of the chaos. On the morning of April 18, 1906, a terrifying 8.3 magnitude earthquake struck California. At that specific moment, Sarah's mansion was actually 7 stories tall. The quake completely destroyed the 7th-story tower and collapsed the entire north wing of the house. Sarah herself was trapped in her bedroom, known as the Daisy bedroom, as the house buckled around her. She literally had to be pried out of the room by a servant with a crowbar. Let's just walk through the logic flow here to see how this completely solves the biggest mystery of the house. Step 1. The earthquake severely damages the structure, tearing off the top floors and ruining entire wings. Step 2. Sarah is getting older, and she prioritizes conservation and practicality over trying to rebuild everything to its former glory. Step 3. She pragmatically boards up and permanently seals off the heavily damaged sections. So when you see a staircase leading to a ceiling or a door that opens to a sudden drop-off, you aren't looking at some crazy ghost trap. You are looking at earthquake damage that was simply sealed up and left behind. And that leads us to Section 5, a beautiful, real legacy, philanthropy, and light. Once we strip away the whole marketing campaign of the Mystery House, we are left with a woman whose life was really defined by philanthropy and light. This was a home where she regularly hosted ice cream socials for local orphans and where she used her immense wealth to anonymously give to charitable causes over and over again. Nothing symbolizes her true vibe better than the 10,000 windows Sarah installed in her villa. Think about it. If you are terrified and hiding from the dark spirits of the underworld, you do not build a house with 10,000 windows. That massive amount of glass absolutely proves her deep affinity for natural light, fresh air, and her obvious desire to build a beautiful, bright, and vibrant space. There's this fantastic quote from the philosopher Martin Heidegger, and I think it perfectly summarizes Sarah's architectural journey. He wrote, "To dwell is to cherish and protect, to preserve and care for." Sarah wasn't a captive of a terrifying labyrinth. After suffering the unimaginable loss of her husband and child, she found a rhythm and a way to heal through the act of building. She was creating a place of care for her staff, for her plants, and for herself. The continuous construction wasn't a curse. It was her life's work. And honestly, it was her therapy. So, I'll leave you with this one final, provocative question. Will we continue to trap Sarah Winchester in a haunted myth designed to sell tickets, or can we finally appreciate the beautiful, empathetic, and brilliant reality she actually built? Because the true story of the Winchester house isn't about death and fear at all. It's about resilience, care, and the absolutely incredible things a woman can build when she turns her grief into a masterpiece. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this changes how you see the world's most misunderstood mansion. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.